everyone, we are from group 7. The members group is me, Indriana, and then Dekalistari. In this nice occasion, we will talk about first, the English as a foreign or international language classroom. The second, teaching foreign language in an intercultural world. Okay, the first presentation by me. English as a foreign language is the term used to describe the study of English by non-native speakers in countries where English is not the dominant language. This is not to be confused with English as a second language, also called English as an additional language, which is the practice of learning English in a predominantly English-speaking country. Okay, how EFL relates to the expanding circle theory. English as a foreign language loosely corresponds with the expanding circle theory of language described by linguist Braj Kachru in Standards Codification and Sociolinguistic Realism, the English language in the outer circle. According to this theory, there are three concentric circles of word English that can be used to categorize places where English is studied and spoken and map English divisions. These are the inner, outer, and expanding circles. Native English speakers are in the inner circle. English-speaking countries that have historically adopted English as a second language or lingua franca are in the outer circles, and countries in which is and countries in which English is used some but is not widely spoken are into expanding circle. The circles represent the different tier of word Englishes. According to this theory, English is a native language in the inner circle, a second language in the outer circle, and a foreign language in the expanding circle. As English is spread globally, more countries are added to the circles. English in Indonesia. The case of English in Indonesia is a unique one because experts can quite agree on whether English should be considered a foreign language or a second language in this Asian country. The reason why has to do with how English come to be spoken and how it is primarily used. The Handbook of World Englishes addresses the dispute. Indonesia, a former Dutch colony, used to emphasize the teaching of Dutch. The movement towards English as a foreign language began at independence, and English is now the main foreign language being learned in Indonesia. English is taught for 8 to 19 years from primary schools through high schools. The main objective is to provide reading skills to enable Indonesians to read science-related materials in English. English as a medium of interaction. The way that English is taught in a given country plays a key role in determining what variety of English is spoken there. For example, if the majority of students have spoken English since birth and you teach exclusively in English, you know that you are dealing with an ENL country. Ultimately, with writer Christopher Fernandez Arguelles, English is only considered a medium of interaction in education and government in ESL or ENL context, not EFL. ESL countries are nations where the medium of interaction in education and government is English, although English may not be the native language. On other hand, EFL countries do not use English as a medium of interaction, but English is taught in schools. Malaysia was once considered an ESL country, but now lends more towards EFL. The methods and approaches of teaching English as second language and foreign language. Okay, the next material will be presented by Dika Lestari.
Okay, I will explain the next material, which is teaching foreign languages in an intercultural world. Nowadays, we are currently living in times of great change, where many changes are taking place globally and population mobility continues across the globe, bringing cross-cultural contact between diverse linguistics and cultural groups. Change is not exclusive or selective in terms of the sectors of society it affects. Industry, health, politics, and business are affected, but education in particular. For example, in many parts of Europe, as elsewhere in the world, the presence of children from ethnic and linguistic minorities in schools is a daily phenomenon. Policymakers include intercultural objectives in the curriculum, and teachers find themselves faced with the challenge of promoting the acquisitions of intercultural competence through their teaching, which applies to all teachers of various subjects as well as to foreign language teachers. As you can see in the PPT, foreign language education is by definition intercultural. Bringing a foreign language to the classroom means connecting learners to a world that is culturally different from their own. Therefore, all foreign language educators are now expected to exploit this potential and promote the acquisitions of intercultural competence in their learners. The objective of language learning is no longer defined in terms of the acquisitions of communicative competence in a foreign language. Teachers are now required to teach intercultural communicative competence. Okay, the next material is intercultural communicative competence in foreign language education. To be able to deal with intercultural experiences, one must have a number of intercultural competencies and characteristics. As you can see in the PPT, there are three components of intercultural competence, including knowledge, skills or behavior, and attitudes. And you can read the point of them in the PPT. So, to clarify the concepts of intercultural competence for educators and teachers in the domain of foreign language education, the knowledge, skills, and attitudes that together make up intercultural competence are discussed. There is a conceptual framework consisting of the 5 knowledge. The first one is savoir. Savoir, with a plural with S, constitutes the knowledge dimension of the conceptual framework, which consists of knowledge about their own social and cultural group in their own country, and similar knowledge about the interlocutor's country on the one hand, and similar knowledge about processes and interaction at the societal level. Thus, knowledge together form the frame of reference of people living within a particular culture. Therefore, in intercultural communication, it is important to always be sensitive to potential referential differences. In addition to culture-specific knowledge, an interculturally competent person also needs to acquire a certain amount of general cultural knowledge, which will enable him or her to deal with the great diversity of foreign cultures. The second one is savoir-apprendre and savoir-comprendre. Together constitute the skills dimensions of the conceptual framework. Savoir-apprendre refers to the capacity to study culture and give meaning to cultural phenomena in an independent way. Savoir-comprendre is related to savoir-apprendre and refers to the capacity to interpret and connect cultures, where people will need knowledge, skills, and attitudes to continue learning throughout their lives. And then savoir-faire refers to the overall ability to act in an interculturally competent way in intercultural context situations, to take into account the specific cultural identity of one's interlocutor, and to act in a respectful and cooperative way. The first is savoir-être and savoir-engager. are best considered together since they refer to a general disposition that is characterized by a critical engagement with the foreign culture under consideration and one's own source engagers, and the capacity and willingness to abandon ethnocentric attitudes and perceptions and the ability to establish and maintain a relationship between one's own and the foreign culture, savoir-être. Okay, the next material is foreign language and intercultural competence teacher. From the description in the previous slide regarding intercultural personal, intercultural experience, and intercultural communicative competence in foreign language education, it is clear that to support the intercultural learning process, right? So, foreign language teachers need additional knowledge, attitudes, competencies, and skills that until recently were considered necessary and sufficient to teach communicative competence in a foreign language. And then, teachers need adequate socio-cultural knowledge of the target language community, frequent and varied contact with that community, as well as mastery of the pragmatic rules of foreign language used in contexts that can be considered part of their professional environment. For example, living with foreign colleagues to organize classroom exchanges, and or email contact. They understand that cultural models differ and that this affects their outlook on life and communication with others. They are familiar with the levels of communication, for example, ideas, speech, acts, nonverbal communication at which intercultural misunderstanding can arise and are able and willing to negotiate, meaning when they perceive cross-cultural misunderstanding. They define the purpose of foreign language education in terms of language learning and acquisitions of intercultural competence. In addition, they are skillful creators of cross-curricular learning environments that promote students' acquisitions of intercultural communicative competence. They can use teaching techniques that promote the acquisition of savoir, savoir apprendre, savoir comprendre, savoir faire, savoir engager, and savoir-être. They can help students connect their own culture with foreign cultures, compare cultures, and empathize with foreign cultural viewpoints. They have knowledge of their students' perceptions and attitudes towards foreign societies and cultures related to the foreign language they teach. They are willing to start from that when designing the learning process and know how to select input materials with a view to changing any misperception that students might have. For the reasons, they know how to assess learning materials from a cross-cultural perspective and how to adjust the materials if they are not likely to achieve the goal of teaching cross-cultural competence. Well, in short, teachers of intercultural communicative competence also need to be familiar with basic insights from cultural anthropology, cultural learning theory, and intercultural communication. They must be willing to teach intercultural competence and must know how to do so. I think that's all material today. We are apologize if we have a mistake. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.